Hello, my name is Ryan Donnelly, and I will be discussing the information operations related capability domain of cyberspace operations. Due to the broad nature of this domain, this presentation will focus on the discipline of cyberspace warfare and its application within a military context. This presentation will examine cyberspace operations, and cyberspace warfare, consider relevant political, technological, and social factors, and finally examine its relationship to other information operation disciplines. There are many competing definitions for cyberspace. Its broadest interpretation is as a notional environment in which communication over computer networks occur. A more detailed interpretation identifies it as a global domain within the information environment consisting of interdependent networks of information technology infrastructures used to store, modify, exchange, process, and collaborate on information. Cyberspace is part of the information and operational environment, unbound by physical locations or international boundaries, providing its users unprecedented access to information, audiences, and critical targets across vast distances. It's a complex and dynamic domain that, in an era of modern warfare, is now a key enabler to all military operations. Within a military context, cyberspace operations adopts an equally broad definition as the employment of cyberspace capabilities, where the primary purpose is to achieve military objectives or effects in or through cyberspace. Unlike traditional domains, terrain within the cyberspace is human-made and not restricted by traditional boundaries or demarcations, and can be highly flexible within a contested space. However, key terrain within the physical domain remains its center of gravity for effective operations, as all equipment and personnel necessary to operate within the cyberspace domain resides within the physical world. Cyberspace warfare focuses on protecting a commander's decision-making cycle and/or projecting power in cyberspace. While an in-depth analysis of the nuances of cyberspace is outside the scope of this presentation, broadly speaking, cyberspace warfare can conduct either offensive cyberspace operations or defensive cyberspace operations. Offensive cyberspace operations intend to project power into and through the grey and red cyber terrain, either through exclusively targeting an adversary's cyberspace capability or by creating first-order effects that then cascade effects into other domains. Defensive cyberspace operations aim to defend blue terrain cyberspace to enable mission assurance. This is achieved through undertaking active measures to both protect against and repel direct threats, preserving the ability to use cyberspace and protect the resident data across networks and mission systems. Whilst offensive and defensive cyberspace operations have separate missions, interoperability and communication between these lines of effort is critical for effective implementation of cyberspace warfare effects. Globally, most advanced militaries now maintain some form of cyberspace warfare function within their permanent forces. Much like Australia, these nation-state actors are both temporally and geographically bound by the legal frameworks of their physical location. This creates many political considerations around the laws of armed conflict and when a cyber effect crosses a line into an act of war. Burkhalter argues it is impossible to design malware to create a cyber effect that does not have a first or second order effect on civilian targets. Another major political challenge is that of attribution. Within cyberspace, tracking, identifying, and laying blame on the perpetrator of a cyber attack or other hacking exploit is extremely difficult, as the underlying architecture of the internet offers numerous ways for attackers to hide their tracks, such as IP obfuscation, the use of proxy servers, or even the victim's own ICT infrastructure, to name a few. There are several technological factors to consider in cyberspace warfare. One of the key considerations is the understanding of the trade-off between building custom malware versus buying off the shelf. Custom malware is unique and fit for purpose, designed to achieve a specific effect against a specific target, whereas off-the-shelf malware can be purchased as an easy-to-use malware that can be executed by comparatively low-skilled actors. In cyberspace warfare, custom malware may be preferred for delivering targeted effects. However, the effort and resources required to generate this effect may be greater than the effect itself. Additionally, the lifespan of the malware may only be as effective as long as the adversary network does not update its current configurations. Off-the-shelf malware has the benefit of being a low-cost, low-effort effect. However, it is likely that the adversary is also aware of these threats and will implement countermeasures to limit their effectiveness. Finally, there are two key social factors that must be considered in cyberspace warfare. As discussed previously, the targetability of civilians and civilian infrastructure is a major consideration when planning a cyber effect. For example, if a SCADA system is targeted to limit the effectiveness of an adversary's base, this may also stop the power to critical national infrastructure, such as hospitals and water supplies. The other key consideration is the blurring between military and civilian cyber actors who are acting in a military capacity. This was evident during the early days of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, when the Ukrainian government formed the unofficial IT army, accumulating over 200,000 volunteers around the world, targeting anything from Russian websites to networks and infrastructure. Finally, I will discuss how cyber warfare can be used to enhance the effects of other related capabilities within the information operations domain. Psychological operations, or PSYOPs, convey selected information and indicators to audiences to influence their motives and objective reasoning. In 2015, during the conflict against Islamic State, the US used cyber warfare, creating online personas through social media to infiltrate their ranks, to gather intelligence, and to disrupt attacks. Social media was also a common tool used to undermine the legitimacy of Islamic State through many Muslim-majority countries. In 21st century warfare, space operations contribute to the critical communications, navigations, and access to logistics. Through the use of effective and layered tactics, cyberspace warfare represents the most accessible way to target space operations, ground stations, and communication channels, which can deny militaries access to each of these. An example of this is through targeted adversary critical computer networks in operation centers that provide telemetry, tracking, control, and orbital maintenance to entire constellations. In extreme cases, if ground station controls cannot communicate with constellations for several days, the constellation can be destroyed entirely, creating a mass and irreversible effect. This concludes my presentation on cyberspace warfare. Please find all my references listed below.